This is Greg Guma with another episode of the People's Republic. This time, conspiracy theories, threat or menace. I'm only kidding. That's the kind of false choice we used to use to joke about the conventional wisdom on Russia and communism. I'll try to draw more subtle distinctions as we look today at the FBI's new focus on the links between certain conspiracy theories and violence, the response strategies, and some deeper questions about how to handle the growing threat of truth decay. So, let's get started. Conspiracies. They used to be good fun, at least sometimes. Provocative dinner table conversation and the focus of action movie plots and pulp fiction. They were like certain parts of the body. Everybody had them, and most of the time no one seemed to get hurt. But that's no longer true. Now conspiracy theories can get people killed or, at the very least, cause havoc. According to the FBI, itself a focus of considerable theorizing these days, conspiracy theory-driven domestic extremists associated with the QAnon conspiracy theory are now officially a domestic terror threat. So what's QAnon? Also known as The Storm, it's a secretive network that believes in a deep state conspiracy against President Trump. And also, they believe in Pizzagate, the theory that a pedophile ring, including Hillary Clinton associates, was run out of the basement of a Washington, D.C. pizza restaurant that didn't have a basement. Forget Jeffrey Epstein. These are the real perverts, you see. Epstein's just another deep state victim. That's how this works. Back in reality, meanwhile, supporters of QAnon have been linked to multiple threats, attempted acts of violence, even murders. And Trump has amplified its messages more than 20 times on Twitter. In October 2017, QAnon jumped into the mainstream in the form of T-shirts and signs that were prominently visible at a Trump campaign rally in Tampa, Florida. Since the election, Trump has met with several supporters of the conspiracy theories at the White House. And get this, a supporter of QAnon is co-chair of a coalition group for Trump's re-election campaign. Welcome to Conspiracy Land. Are more people buying into conspiracies today, or is it mainly just more media coverage? Consider this. For most of the past 50 years, between 60 and 80% of the country has believed in some form of JFK conspiracy theory. Now, they're obviously not all crazy conspiracy nuts. On the other hand, in 2016, conspiracy thinking did cross over, with some outside help, from internet chat groups to mainstream news coverage. For example, a Yahoo News podcast, aptly named Conspiracy Land, recently revealed that Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service was the origin of a hoax report that tied the murder of Seth Rich, a Democratic National Committee staffer, to Hillary Clinton. Now, Washington police believe that Rich was killed in a botched robbery, and there is no proof that his murder had any political connections, but many people continue to believe that there was. Among the violent conspiracy theories cited in the recent FBI document is one involving a man who thought the Transportation Security Administration agents were part of a New World Order elite. Another focused on the high-frequency active oral research program known as HAARP, a government-funded facility in Alaska that has been linked to everything from death beams to mind control. I'll come back to that one later. Whatever the truth about HAARP, 2 men were recently arrested for stockpiling weapons, ammunition, and other tactical gear in preparation to attack the Alaska facility. They believe it is being used to, quote, control the weather and prevent humans from talking to God. In response to the spread of conspiracy-motivated violence, the FBI appears to be applying the same radicalization analysis it uses against foreign terrorism. Basically, they focus on the ideological motives. Now, FBI Director Wray claims that the Bureau is only concerned with violence and not with what people believe. But the number of extremist categories the government uses is growing. According to Michael German, a former FBI agent, now with the Brennan Center for Justice, quote, it's part of the radicalization theory the FBI has promoted despite empirical studies that show it's bogus. They like the radicalization theory because it justifies mass surveillance, he says. If we know everyone who will do harm is coming from this particular community, mass surveillance is important. We keep broadening the number of communities we include in extremist categories. But that argument is also basically a kind of a conspiracy theory, isn't it? And that's the real problem. It's increasingly hard to tell which ones to accept. The slippery slope. Let's be clear. Not all conspiracy theories are dangerous. Even the FBI admits that. Some are even benign, but others have led to either attempted or successfully violent attacks. The Pizzagate conspiracy, for example, led to a 28-year-old man invading a Washington, D.C. restaurant to rescue the children he believed were being kept there and to fire an assault-style weapon inside. Or there's the related overarching deep state conspiracy theory. The FBI cites an unnamed California man arrested last December after being found with what appeared to be bomb-making materials in his car. He was allegedly planning to blow up a satanic temple monument in the Capitol Rotunda in Springfield, Illinois. Why? Quote, to make Americans aware of Pizzagate and the New World Order, who are dismantling society. The FBI's intelligence bulletin doesn't mention Alex Jones or InfoWars by name, but it does mention some of the conspiracy theories frequently associated with him, especially the New World Order theory. Jones also claims that the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, in which 26 children were killed, was a hoax, a false flag operation intended as a pretext for the government to seize or outlaw firearms. The families of a number of victims have sued Jones for defamation, saying his conspiracy mongering contributed to death threats and online abuse. But let's follow the conspiracy trail a bit further. President Trump certainly pushes a number of theories. I've made a short list. He often talks about the deep state, and he frequently retweets news from QAnon. He's the godfather of Spygate, which involves Obama and others wiretapping him, and he's a big pusher of the voter impersonation lie. That's the one in which there are millions of phantom voters. There's also a white genocide theory, which is well baked into his daily output, and of course the Obama citizenship theory, which launched the movement that launched his presidential candidacy. Yet, somehow I don't see the FBI investigating Trump for peddling conspiracies. Instead, Michael C. McGarity, the FBI's assistant director of the Counterterrorism Division, told Congress in May that the Bureau now classifies domestic terrorism threats into four main categories. 1. Racially motivated violent extremism. 2. Anti-government, anti-authority extremism. 3. Animal rights, environmental extremism, together. And 4. Abortion extremism, a term that they use to classify both pro-choice and anti-abortion extremists. The new focus on conspiracy theories falls under the broader category of anti-government extremism, and that's a slippery slope indeed. Reality check. Let's keep things in perspective, if that's possible, in such a confusing world. By taking a look back, less than a decade ago, the biggest right-wing conspiracy theory involved Obama as a secret Muslim. Millions of people believed it. Also, that secular humanists wanted to repress religion, and that liberals were plotting to confiscate people's guns and push a gay agenda. That's all part of the reason why Trump was elected in the first place. At the opposite end of the political spectrum, however, there's the idea that 9/11 was an inside job, and all that entails. In the past, I've occasionally been called a conspiracy theorist myself. 10 years ago, for example, for saying that we should know more about the attacks on the Twin Towers. Still, I don't think that a modern-day Reichstag fire at multiple locations qualifies as reasonable, more like a radical and somewhat implausible conclusion. In other words, 10 years ago, it was already too easy for an extreme, often paranoid theory to circulate. So here's a bit of what I observed on the radio back then. I usually resist the urge to challenge the controversial theories of fellow travelers, at least in public. Years ago, at an after-dinner discussion about Al-Qaeda and after Obama, someone casually asserted that President Roosevelt knew about the attack on Pearl Harbor in advance and let it happen, and no one objected or said a word. I thought about it, but I let the moment pass. Anything's possible, right? Why be rude? But some theories and predictions are just too important. They are widely accepted as indisputable and part of an overall worldview, usually linked with an anti-establishment ideology. They have practical consequences for social action. They can spark deep divisions, and they can influence how people see and treat others. In some groups, if you question the conclusions of a prevailing conspiracy theory, you're either a dupe or a collaborator. Deep skepticism is often at the root, a good thing in general. After all, so much of what we once believed has turned out to be a lie, or at least a very selective version of reality. But still, shouldn't there be standards? Also, why do some theories get all the attention while others, perhaps more credible ones, get buried? And can't we at least call people to account when their claims repeatedly lead down false trails? In 2004, when friends claimed that George W. Bush would invade someplace, probably Cuba, before the election, I was skeptical, but said nothing. 4 years later, when colleagues embraced the idea that either A, there would be a pre-election invasion of Syria this time, or B, that federal troops would be used to install Bush as a dictator and block Obama's election. In short, martial law was imminent. Then I took bets. In 2011, word spread in activist circles that the rise in U.S. drone strikes and NATO helicopters attacks inside Pakistan were harbingers of something bigger. The war was going to be extended into Pakistan with the ultimate goal of seizing that nation's nuclear weapons. Turns out they just went after Osama, not Obama. Although many people believe that that was also a lie and that bin Laden was actually killed years earlier. These death conspiracies sound like the classic one about a fake moon landing. We never went there, right? Including phony video and a staged photo of the National Security Brain Trust looking at, SEAL Team 6 on a top secret movie set? That's the idea. But speaking of plots, depopulation has been getting some attention, specifically related to the use of covert technology to allegedly cause earthquakes and tsunamis. Which brings me back to HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, a joint military program involved in classified experiments involving the ionosphere. The basic claim is that HAARP has been involved for decades in developing various types of weather-based and environmental warfare capabilities. Now, it doesn't help that the military has a name for this kind of thing, weather modification, and this is why the two men were stockpiling the ammunition for the attack recently. Still, using HAARP to cause earthquakes, wipe out regions, and thin the herd is something else entirely. That theory went this way. Supporters of the depopulation theory say Haiti was a transparent example, and they claimed as evidence that a U.S. task force was ready to invade before the earthquake occurred. And before that came the Indian Ocean tsunami, where people weren't warned as soon as possible. And after that came Fukushima, a full-scale assault, not only on Japan, but on the oceans and the atmosphere. Quote, "The established pattern with disasters and invasions is incremental escalation." That's what a friend explained, who supports the theory. Nuclear reactors in the U.S. are therefore sitting ducks just waiting for a HAARP attack, and they have made it clear that an 80% reduction in world population is their goal. Who made that clear? The overseers of the New World Order. Them. Early in 2011, a rumor also began circulating that WikiLeaks was a CIA plot. The idea here was that the leaks actually supported the U.S. imperial agenda around